It's the middle of October already, and you know exactly what that means. This weekend means the final 2 weeks are ahead of us to get ready for November, which to other people is just a regular month, but to us as writers, it means NaNowrimo, National Novel Writing Month. 2 years ago, I chanced upon this book. It's called No Plot, No Problem, and because I was wanting to have a first attempt at writing a novel, I thought, oh, it's a good idea. And it was only really when I started reading through the book that I discovered anything about NaNowrimo. I hadn't been aware of it at all. How can that be? I didn't even know what NaNowrimo was. But having read the book, all of a sudden I realized there are hundreds of thousands of people sitting down at the moment preparing for writing a book in November, and that the numbers will probably be swollen by those who don't even do any preparation. 2 years ago, I launched into NaNowrimo feeling that I knew all I needed to do to write a book without a plot and really without any preparation. And it was an exhausting month, but I loved it because I finished a novel. I'd never written a novel before, and the process of engaging with the NaNowrimo website, which is full of tips and ideas and motivational interviews, because there are going to be times when you are exhausted and you think, I can't do this anymore. What are other people doing? And that's when you get a boost, you get lifted up by a sense of what other people are getting on with and working to. Last year, however, I was much better prepared. I didn't do Preptober, because why should I do that? I'd read a book called No Plot, No Problem. Last year was very different for me. I decided to use NaNowrimo to bring together all the ideas that I'd been working on over the summer, just mulling things over in my head, ready for a new title related to personal finance and household budgeting. When the clock started on the 1st of November, I had allocated some time, and I spent the first 2 days bringing structure and ideas to how I was going to put the book together. By the third day, I had a chapter plan. I was able to take my ideas, allocate what was going to go into each chapter, and bring in examples and case studies and have a whole book. So at the end of 3 days, and by the way, this isn't about writing every day. At the end of 3 days, I had a plan for bringing my book together. At the end of the first week, I had actually got my whole book plan laid out. So I knew, not paragraph by paragraph, but I knew that each chapter had 3 or 4 themes, and I knew pretty much what was going to go into each of those themes. And I was ready to get the book written. So I was 1 week in, I got 3 weeks to go, and I'm absolutely on the starting blocks, feeling prepared. Now I was ready to write the book. So I gave myself 2 hours every day in which I would sit down and work on each chapter. Because I had structured the whole book before going forward, it didn't matter whether I wrote chapter 1 or chapter 7 or chapter 12, or I wrote chapter 12 first, because I'd got my ideas set out and I knew what I wanted to encapsulate within that chapter. And for me as a non-fiction writer, that's what I love about non-fiction. With your novel, you will need a structure, a template for your book, follow the arc of the character's development, follow the plot as it evolves, and look at what happens stage by stage by stage. But again, I don't believe you have to write that in a chronological sequence from the beginning to the end of the book. All authors of fiction have got different opinions on that. I am working on a new novel now, and with that one, I am templating how I go forward, and I'm using the Save the Cat Writes a Novel beat sheet. Within NaNowrimo, there is a website that you log into at the beginning of the challenge and you say, this will be my project. You don't have to name it for the actual title of the book in case you want to protect that, and that's understandable. But you give your project file a name, and you can upload your daily word count. You can upload your thoughts and ideas. You can also connect with other writers who are taking part in the same challenge, so that you have a virtual buddy or a virtual friend that you can share ideas with. The reason I gave myself 2 hours a day for the challenge was because if the goal for the month, and it is for the NaNowrimo, there's a 50,000 word goal that you set yourself, well, if you break that down into about 16 or 1700 words a day, you've got just over 50,000 words. So I figured I write at about 800 words an hour, so 2 hours, 1600 words thereabouts. And that was my plan. Only a week or so before starting the Nanowrimo last year, I chanced upon a video on YouTube about something called an Alpha Smart Neo. It looked quite strange. I'd never seen anything like it before, and it promised something called distraction-free writing. So perhaps if you've got your laptop, you might be on Wi-Fi, you might be getting notifications, and it takes you away from your writing project. So here is an Alpha Smart Neo. Very simple little device, very small, thin, very lightweight. And what's superb about it is that it only has a small LED screen that takes about 4 lines of text as you write. And across the top of the keyboard here are 8 files, and each of those will hold approximately 10,000 words of text. I've certainly taken them up to 9,500 and not had any challenge. And I used this tool, this Alpha Smart Neo, to write a total non-fiction book from scratch. In November of last year, I wrote a book called 10-Minute Budget, which is about personal and household finance. And it was an amazingly simple process to do. To get to the last day of the month, I was actually about 2,000 words short. And of course, I was hoping to do 2 hours and get another 1,600 words done. But again, I was still going to be 400 words or so short. But in the end, I finished it 10 minutes before the end of the day, 10 minutes before midnight. That night, I finished my new book. It was such a relief to finish. I'd set myself a goal, I'd declared it publicly, and I completed the whole book in the last 3 weeks of NaNowrimo in November last year. Of course, once I'd finished it, for the next week, I didn't want to look at it. I was completely sick of the idea of the book. I felt it was a good book, but I couldn't bear to even look at it. I needed a mental break from having writing, and you may feel the same when we get into December and you think, oh, that's behind me. I'm so pleased. It's done. It's dusted. It's finished. Here are a few tips and suggestions for you to carry you successfully through the end of October, but into a good launch for November and your own personal NaNowrimo. My first point is that you get all the stationery you need for the month in-house. You might be writing on paper, you might be writing digitally, you may be writing digitally and then want to print off what you do each night. Have you got the right levels of ink stock in your home-based printer? Have you got enough? Have you got a pad of A4 or a couple of blocks of A4 stationery that will feed your printer during the course of the month? The second point I want to make is that you will be laser focused and committed to your writing goals during the month of November. So make sure that those you share your house with, friends, if you've got roommates and housemates or family, let them know what you're going to be doing. If you can establish a timetable or a special place to be, and they know that that's your timetable that particular day or that evening, or that if you're sitting at this desk or at the kitchen table at a certain time, you really don't want to be disturbed unless it's absolutely necessary, then that will help them to work around you and with you to make sure that you accomplish your goal of your daily writing targets. The third point I'd like to make is that you get the snacks in. When you are in a writing frenzy, when you're being creative and putting all amounts of energy into the task in front of you on your screen or as you're writing on your project manually, you will crave chocolate, you will need a cake, you might need a packet of biscuits or some crisps or some pop drinks or some delicious ground coffee. Make sure that all those things are in your house before the challenge starts. So in the last week of October, do a final shopping trip to get all those little treats in. You're going to be working hard, very intensely for 1 or 2 or 3 hours a day. Have those little sugar boosts or sugar rushes to keep you going. And the fourth point I want to make is that you should find yourself an accountability partner. This is somebody who knows you, who cares about you, and to whom you can actually be really honest about whether you're feeling positive and good about the writing or whether things are going down and they're difficult and you're struggling in a certain section of your book or your writing project. And that person will support you and just say, come on, just give it another half hour today, give it another hour tomorrow, and just keep you on track. Not necessarily looking at what you actually write, but encouraging and supporting you in the process of completing your work of fiction or non-fiction during November. Set a fun goal. So, for example, if at the end of week 2, which is halfway through the program, you have done at least a third of the writing, maybe a half, but at least a third of your targeted writing output, you and they will meet up and go out for a quick coffee. And when you've finished the book by the end of November, book a time in the diary, and with that person or those friends, go out and have a meal and have a drink and celebrate your accomplishment during NaNowrimo. So get busy over the next few weeks, get your preparation done, get the layout and structure and format of your book down on paper, down on screen, but securely worked through in your head, and be ready for a great start on the 1st of November. So happy writing, and let us know how you get on throughout the month.